In this lecture, we're going to talk about a few things regarding variables that were a little more advanced than in the last lecture. So starting off, let's talk about null value. If I have a $x equals null, and I echo $x, you'll see it returns nothing. Null is basically a value that represents a variable that has no value. If I type var underscore dump $x, it'll show that x is a null value. Next, we're going to talk about Booleans. Remember in the last video, I mentioned if $x equals $x, that was a Boolean statement saying a true or false, x is equal to x. Well, in the same note, you can define Boolean values. I can say x equals true. Echo x. Notice a true value equals 1. If I say false, then nothing is displayed. As far as a large program is concerned, if you just have to define something as true or false, you're much better off defining it as actually false rather than, say, a string that says false or true. This is because this takes up many more characters than just a 0 or a 1. Next, let's look at string functions. So if I have a string, we're going to call it myInfo and set it equal to this is my info. And if I echo out strlen or string length, and then I type $myInfo. Let's see what this returns. So that equals 15. So we're going to go ahead and count these. Each character is considered one length. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. The space is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 places. So this means that this actually has 15 characters. Each place is called its index. When you're indexing a string, the index does not start at 1. The index will actually start at 0. So when counting, you will actually count at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I was to ask you, what index is at the index of 5? You would actually say the I is, because you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I is the index of 5. So can I prove this? I'm glad you asked. I'm just going to go ahead and comment this line. And I'm going to type echo $myInfo. And now we haven't used this command yet, but I'm going to put 2 brackets here, followed by a semicolon, and I'm going to type 5 here. Now we haven't got into arrays yet, but technically every string is what you would call an array. In a string's case, it's an array of letters and numbers. So now I'm querying the array of this string for the index of 5. So let's save it and see what it returns. And it returned the letter I, just like we expected. This is contradictory to most people's way of counting, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, therefore the space. We can also do this by doing an strpos, or string position. So let's echo strpos $myInfo, and even though we can put that in double quotes, we're not going to. Then we're going to separate this by a comma, and what position are we looking for? Well, we're looking for the word is. Notice I had to open this with a bracket because we're calling a predefined function. This function requires a comma and another variable to say what we're looking for, and then you have to close the bracket and end with a semicolon. So when we refresh, we get 2. Well, that may not have been a great example because if I have 0, 1, 2, it took the first element, which is. So let's change that to my. We're going to expect that to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's try that. And we get 8. Finally, we're going to look at constants. Unlike a variable, a constant cannot be changed throughout the script. It's a definition that you set at the beginning of your code that will propagate throughout the rest of the code. So if I type define, this is a PHP tutorial. I have to define what this is. I'll say value. Now, if I echo value, I get this is a PHP tutorial. Notice how this is different than variables, that we are not putting a $sign in front of it. We define it here in quotes, and then we put the value of what we're defining. Similarly, you could define a variable $x equals 55, and then inside of here we could say $x. And now the constant of value throughout the site will be equal to 55. Notice that constants can also act in addition. So let's say the define value is equal to 5. Now here we'll echo value plus $x. Actually, we've been doing plus a lot. Let's do multiplication. So value times $x equals 275. But notice what happens if we try to say value equals value plus 1. And then we'll just echo value. We already know right here that we have an error because Dreamweaver is saying red. So if we refresh the page, we get an unexpected equal sign. That's because a constant is constant throughout the site and never changes.